Many listeners have contacted me with requests to publish links to all the resources that I'm using in the Survivors series, and I will do exactly this in this video. Since at least 40% of the information that I present is taken from the new Chronology project, which is an international project coordinated by Anatoly Fomenko. First, I will cover that in detail. I encountered his work years ago, but because it was so unusual, I discarded it as ridiculous. And it was only on my second encounter that I understood that I need to spare more time studying it, and it was absolutely rewarding. People who are not Russian will have extra difficulty accepting the shock of the new chronology of the real history, and that is why before providing the exact links, I really want you to hear about few possible problems that most of you will face. Fomenko concentrates on what I call the empire of the survivors, but he calls it a Russian horde empire, which will not agree with the world of many foreigners, because they will take it to mean that the Russians that we know them as of today were founders of everything. But in reality, according to that idea, then everybody comes from those so-called Russians, and we're all descendants of them. All of the Caucasian people and even some others have been very much mixed with the genes of this Russian horde. That's why I renamed them survivors to avoid this international misunderstanding. So if the term Russian Rus horde empire bothers you, then you just substitute it in your mind with survivors, or otherwise you accept that Russian means some other meaning, and that is like in most broad sense Caucasian people. I don't claim that this will be very exact, but it could be something like that, again in a very broad sense. The second major problem you will encounter is that Fomenko implies that the history of our civilization is more or less 1,000 years and no more. And basically that much it gets for modern people who are interested in mystery to close his books forever and don't open them, because we are kind of accustomed by the so-called alternative sources to always try to extend the history further back in time. Well, as I found out myself very recently, that is not a correct approach. Many of the ancient mysteries are actually very recent histories that have been artificially driven back to the past just to look more mythological and legendary and make us unaware that in very recent time we have lost the treasure of our knowledge. And in addition to that, if very recently we knew so much, then how can we even imagine what kind of godlike beings we were, the humans, when we were in our original form, which was full of knowledge? By original form, I mean the humans in the peak of the golden age. They were distinctly different from us. Not only they were much bigger, they were way smarter, and from my experience here now, I can talk only from the point of ayahuasca visions. Nothing goes so back, way back in history. But all I can say is that the original human race was far beyond even the imagination of a typical modern human being. So I beg you not to be put off by the fact that Fomenko doesn't discuss those godly beings at all. Actually, that is in a way very good, because the dimensions that they were functioning in, the horizon of their self-awareness is so much beyond ours that probably most of what will think their history is will be pure imagination. And I'm not the only one who maintains this. opinion. For example, Patanjali, the author of the famous Patanjali Sutras, the undoubted father of the system of yoga, he also talks about the state of liberation or the full potential that a human being can experience in this way. Well, we better don't talk about it because it's so much beyond our current limits and understanding, and he refuses to even discuss what it is. He writes his book and he devotes his full yoga system towards attaining that liberation. And what is that liberation? He even says, I don't want to talk about it. That's the full human potential. The next problem you may encounter is that Fomenko finds out many so-called phantom figures and events in the history. That means the same person or event is depicted in multiple forms in the history of various nations, but it's actually the same person. And then when he tries to identify which one was the original and where did it happen, I was getting the impression that somehow he tends to always put them in Russia. But again, for the sake of honesty, I must admit that every time when I did a serious research and a study of any particular example that I doubt, at the end I discovered that Fomenko was right. So apparently I am the prejudiced one, but you may face this problem, and if you do, I would advise you to not discard his full project because of this. And be aware that it may come out after all that he was right. Thank you very much for listening so far. I really appreciate that. Now I start with the good news. He's got a website in English, and you can read one of his main books, which is a concise history, on his website for free. Many other resources are also available for free. And if over there you will find a lot of the interesting sources that I quote with the proper annotations and their exact names, so that you can find the books and read them for yourself. That is a lot of homework by itself, and if you are thirsty for knowledge even beyond that, he offers further books and even films in English, and they are sold on various websites, including Amazon. Now, besides Fomenko, I used material from a couple of Russian bloggers. Links are also found in the description of the video. And of course, some material of my favorite scientist, Alexander Kaltepin. earthbeforeflood.com is his website. I have not used many materials from Vadim Chernubrov, but I mention him because he's maybe the most knowledgeable alternative researcher of our time, at least that is my estimation. Well, getting back to the main source, Fomenko, there is a full playlist with some English and French and Spanish translations available for free on YouTube. Look for the link in the description. But this is the end of what I have to say. The rest of this video will be a trailer of Fomenko's work in English. It is an official trailer of the new chronology. It has nothing to do with me.
Нас приучили к тому, что даты древней и античной истории хорошо и давно были известны хронистам, и никогда счет лет не прерывался. Что якобы, начиная с глубокой древности, существовал непрерывный счет лет, что хроники в себе несут унифицированную шкалу, скажем, подсчета лет событий от Рождества Христова или сотворения мира, и что хронисты год за годом аккурат записывали следующие события, которые они сами лично наблюдали. Однако при ближайшем ознакомлении выясняется, что это далеко не так. Оказывается, что даты, которые мы знаем с детства, со школы, из университетских курсов, были созданы, вычислены не так давно, а именно в XVI-XVII веках нашей эры. И известны авторы, кто создавал эту хронологию. Глобальная хронология была создана трудами Йосифа Скальгера и Дионисия Питавиуса. Это известные хронологи XVI-XVII веков. До них единой шкалы отсчета лет и унификации эр не было. Они впервые, как они считали, привели в порядок хаос датировок, который существовал до них, и в меру своего разумения и меру своих возможностей они вычислили даты основных событий глубокой древности. Выясняется на самом деле, что их способы подсчета были несовершенны. Как мы обнаружили, они сделали ошибки, и ошибки довольно значительные. Речь идет о сдвигах дат не на 1-2 года, а иногда на сотни и на тысячи лет. Поэтому резюме следующее. Те даты, которые мы сегодня знаем и которые приписаны событиям античности, стали известны людям только с XVI-XVII веков. По-видимому, эти авторы ошиблись. И сегодняшние методы математическо-астрономические скрывают их ошибки, и сегодня мы можем их перепроверить, убедиться, что они ошиблись, и создать новую хронологию, основанную на современных методах, и она оказывается более короткой, чем мы привыкли думать, по крайней мере, на 1000 лет.
Даты в средние века по юлианскому и григорианскому календарям, ведущих летоисчисления от Рождества Христова, записывались буквами и цифрами. Греческая буква «хи», стоящая перед датой, записанной римскими цифрами, когда-то означала имя «Христос», но потом была переиначена в цифру 10. Таким образом, произошел хронологический сдвиг средневековых дат на 1000 лет при сопоставлении позднейшими историками двух различных способов записи.
Has history been tampered with? The documented history of human civilization is supposed to reach several millennia back into the past. And yet if we consider the rate at which civilization is supposed to have progressed, we encounter periods of obscurity and informational vacuum following the alleged decline of every ancient empire, and then everything starts anew. Inventions are presumed lost for centuries, then reinvented by people whose names bear suspicious semblance to those of the ancient inventors. Just how true all of this is? Could history as we know it really be a collation of several chronicles relating to one and the same period of time? Apparently, this is what the Russian mathematician Anatoly Fomenko claims. He is the author of the first volume in a series of 7 that came out in English recently and generated incredible controversy amongst professional historians worldwide. Many are trying to put the author into one league with numerous paranoid conspiracy theorists and mad inventors. However, all of his work conforms to the highest academic standards and is backed by solid scientific facts. Furthermore, some of the most lucid minds of our time support many of the theories put forward by the authors. Garry Kasparov, the world chess champion, says the following in his preface to Volume 1.
This book will change your entire perception of history forever. What if ancient Rome, Greece, and Egypt were invented during the Renaissance? What if the Old Testament was a rendition of events in the Middle Ages? What if Jesus Christ was born in 1053 and crucified in 1086 AD? Sounds unbelievable? Not after you've read History, Fictional Science by Anatoly Fomenko, the leading mathematician of our time.
Popular fiction dealing with conspiracies of one sort or another is actually quite tame as compared to reality. Dan Brown pens a possible conspiracy of the Church against the memory of its originator Jesus. He follows unknowingly in the steps of Martin Luther, who started his Protestant revolution with accusation of papal conspiracy in the matter of Constantine's testament. Well, Martin Luther was right and Constantine's testament was false. Remember, poor Martin Luther had as media outlet nothing better than the doors of the Wittenberg's cathedral. Dan Brown has mass media at his disposal. The Roman Catholic Church, for instance, is involved in a much greater hoax than the most daring writer could possibly conceive of, one that deals with the very foundations of history itself. The above statement is neither an exaggeration, nor metaphor. Very few people are aware that the BC-AD chronology as we know it was created by a handful of Jesuits in the 16th-17th century, Joseph Scaliger, Dionysius Petavius and their successors. We have grown so accustomed to a timeline that runs through many millennia, from the Egyptian pyramids to the present day, that the mere thought of questioning its veracity seems perfectly preposterous, just like the notion of a rotating Earth must have seemed in the epoch of Galileo Galilei, and just as heretical. But nevertheless, the entire conception of ancient and medieval history known to us today owes its existence to a 16th-century Jesuit hoax. A hoax that has finally been exposed with the aid of astronomy, mathematical statistics and modern computational facilities by one of the world's leading mathematicians, the Russian academician Professor Anatoly Fomenko. His fundamental work on chronology, history, fiction or science, now available in English, is more fascinating than Dan Brown at his wildest. Yet it is truly a non-fiction work. That goes to say, everything else you have read about history should probably classify as fiction.
This book will change your entire perception of history forever. What if ancient Rome, Greece and Egypt were invented during the Renaissance? What if the Old Testament was a rendition of events in the Middle Ages? What if Jesus Christ was born in 1053 and crucified in 1086 AD? Sounds unbelievable? Not after you've read History, Fiction or Science by Anatoly Fomenko, the leading mathematician of our time.